Now, concerning the South, clearly we see that there are some developments that are worrying in the African countries. So we are more or less pushed out many Western countries, including US, from Niger, from Mali, from Burkina Faso, from other countries. And this will cause problems for the future if we don't act. Because what we will see is a mass migration coming towards Europe. Migration is not per se a problem, but what comes with migration is terrorism and criminalism. And that's what we not can afford to get into the European soil. So we are thinking about an integrated approach to step up our efforts in Africa. And especially this approach will be that we will support them in a way that they ask for, instead of bringing them good, like we did in the past. So we're working hard on that one. But the reality at the moment is we lost ground. We lost ground in Mali, we lost ground in Burkina Faso, in Niger, and some other countries. At the same time, we're doing very well in Mozambique, in Somalia, and we're starting up some new efforts in the Gulf of Guinea. The third threat we are facing is the sea lines of communication. So the Houthis who are targeting merchant shipping in the Red Sea, and which prevents us using the Red Sea and the Suez Canal. And actually, as we speak, we are shoulder to shoulder operating with two operations. There's an American operation in that area, and there's a European naval operation, Aspides, which is protecting merchant shipping, very successful until now. If we don't do that, it will cost the European Union 200 to 300 million per day. So there's a clear economic interest also.
Oh, that's very interesting, and thanks for mentioning the Aspides mission, which I think is crucial and has been unprecedented in a way on how it has been able to, bring together countries that have also different, let's say, approaches to security and interest as well.
So there are more actors active in Africa. And I mentioned already migration, but it also means that when we are not present there, that it will be more difficult to have access to raw materials. That's also why those other actors are in place at the moment. The European Union doesn't like it.
European interest, answer and explanation. European nations such as Britain, France, Spain, Portugal, and the Netherlands were interested in Africa for its natural resources, gold and ivory, for example. Also, Africa was a source of slaves used both in Europe and in European colonies in the Caribbean and North and South America. Europeans' opinions. The Europeans called Africa the Dark Continent because it was unknown to them. This got mixed up with the more sinister idea of, quote, darkest Africa, a place where the inhabitants were savages and brutal. Europeans, after the Industrial Revolution, considered industrial towns and technology to be signs of civilization. Europe's effects on Africa. Europeans took the best land by force. African farmers were forced to grow cash crops like cocoa and coffee, causing there to be a shortage of food in many areas of Africa. Africans were forced to work under terrible conditions on plantations, railways, and logging. Why did European countries want Africa? During the time, many European countries expanded their empires by aggressively establishing colonies in Africa so that they could exploit and export Africa's resources. Raw materials like rubber, timber, diamonds, and gold were found in Africa. Europeans also wanted to protect trade routes. Which European countries control the most of Africa? Britain and France ultimately controlled the largest territories. Britain's goal was to control one continuous territory that stretched the length of the continent from Egypt to South Africa, which they eventually achieved following the First World War, while France's aim was for one continuous territory. What is Africa's largest source of income? Agriculture is the single most important economic activity in Africa, employing more than 2/3 of the continent's population. African nations are the world's largest exporters of cacao, the raw material used to make chocolate. Who invests the most in Africa? China. China is the world's largest investor in Africa in terms of total capital. What is China doing in Africa? China is now Africa's biggest trading partner, with Sino-Africa Trade topping 200 billion per year. Over 10,000 Chinese firms are currently operating throughout the African continent, and the value of Chinese businesses there since 2005 amounts to more than 2 trillion, with 300 billion in current investments. So the reason that I wanted to bring forth this video is to get rid of a lot of hearsay that a lot of people like to state, where Europe is on its own, it's strong, it can do whatever it wants to do. They don't really need anybody else. When realistically, the only reason that Europe is able to exist the way of which it exists at this moment in time is due to the effect of the labor and due to the effect of the amount of resources that the continent has. That's clear cut what I have this image directly in front of you. All of these things that you see, you can find now in Europe. Again, like they stated to you before, just even going with chocolate, right? They need that to grow somewhere. Europe is pretty much, a here and there place. The weather is not really as consistent as you would have it in a lot of places in Africa. And Africa also hosts and has quite a perfect climate when it deals with growing a lot of things. And not only that, because of the way that Africa is in the position that it is in, this is why you have so many things that are located there, why you have the petroleum, why you have the crude oil, why you have the different gases, why you have gold, why you have iron, right? These are a lot of different resources, raw materials that Europe would love to get their hands completely on so that they can stay as strong as they are at this current time, or whatever level that they are currently on. But as the lieutenant told you guys, they have lost their grip. They don't really have a footing to stand on when it deals with Africa like it used to be. Let's say the 70s, the 60s, the 50s, the 40s, and so on and so on and so on. They lost that footing. And he stated that there was a lot of actors there that enabled that to take place. And I want to make this very clear. It's not that the actors enabled, it's that Europe enabled this to take place, because they wanted to take things by force, and they felt that, as long as they use force, then that's all that matters. And they learned over time that if you have somebody that may want to, in a sense, do the exact same thing, but they're coming at them differently, people are going to go with that different route. So China, who don't have nothing to do with nothing, they're like, hey, we see how Europe is, in a sense, treating you. We're going to do this a little bit of a different way. Yes, we're looking at you because you have all of the resources of which we need. And because we need those resources, we would like to formulate a lucrative partnership where everybody is an owner, right? You have your stuff and we have ours. So with that, we're going to come together. We're going to formulate some trades, and we're going to also have some of our people, our businesses directly in Africa to further establish, certain things. And along with that trade, we'll have, maybe some schools so that people can learn Chinese, and that our Chinese people can learn the African language there. So therefore, we are sharing, right? Culturally, we are sharing, certain types of things, and we're going to grow, right? That's what China's doing. So when you heard this European representative state that, hey, we have some bad actors, no, that's not a bad actor. That's somebody with a business mindset conducting themselves in a business type of way. Now, I'm not sitting up there stating that China doesn't have other ulterior motives that people may not be paying attention to. Not saying that they don't, because obviously everybody does, because everybody plays for the home team. All I'm saying, for face value, China is, in a sense, the good guy, because we already know what Europe has done. We already know how the European people believe and see Africa. If you were to go over to Europe right now and to set up a podcast and ask people what is the poorest nation, or what do they feel is the poorest continent, people are going to say Africa. They're not going to look at themselves, because they're going to judge the way that they live versus how they perceive Africans live. And they'll be like, well, obviously it's Africa. Look at us. Look at our clothes. Look at our fashion. Even though when you go to a lot of these nations within Africa, they have a lot of sprawling, beautiful, colorful cities. There's a lot of things there. But again, the media for decades, has done a very great job at teaching the world and telling people that Africa is only one thing, and this is how you see it. And that's a very small view. to basically look at a whole continent, one of which where every other continent here can pretty much comfortably fit within Africa and still have space. That's how large Africa is. Better yet, that's how large the world is. That's letting you know that if we got one continent where all the other continents can fit within it, we obviously don't realistically know how large the earth, the world really is. Right. But again, like I said before, I did this video in order to showcase the fact that these European nations are not all that they seem to be, and they're losing their foothold, they're losing their gripping, and it's only because of them. They are to blame for the reason that they don't have the resources, why they're not able to, move to and from the way that they want to, as he clearly told you about trading routes and how this and that is happening and how they're trying to formulate some things in Guinea and a variety of other places. And this is also another reason of why these landlocked areas in Europe depend solely on the African waters in order to fish, or the African coast, preferably the West Coast, in order to fish, and even some waters above. But like I said before, it is what it is. And the downfall that takes place is by the people that started the original downfall. So Europe, again, at the end of the day, you have yourself to blame for how everything is going to transpire in the future when it deals with your people and your countries.